Isaiah 7:14. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, an Alma will be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. And so the normative presentation of this text, if a Christian is even familiar with it, will be, virgin birth. And Emmanuel means God with us, which means Jesus is God and he's with us, and therefore there's the deity of Christ. And like I said, I would imagine only a few decades ago, if you had been presented with that, almost no one would have had a pushback. Now, that's not the case. And we have to be prepared. We have to be aware of what the text is actually saying, what its context is, so that its true meaning can be defended and presented and understood, and that we don't find ourselves defending things we shouldn't defend. So, for example, even atheists are aware of the fact that the Hebrew term Alma in Isaiah 7:14 does not technically mean virgin. When you hear someone say that Alma does not mean virgin, the immediate thought is to defend what you thought you had been taught in the past. And that's how many Christians find themselves in situations of defending what you don't need to be defending. What, in fact, you can't defend because it's not true. Alma, in the Hebrew language, can simply mean a young woman of marriageable age. There is nothing that demands that it mean virgin, but it doesn't exclude virgins. It's just a young woman of marriageable age. The assumption would be if she's not married that she's a virgin. So within that context, the assumed meaning, if unmarried, would be of a virgin. But it could also refer to a young woman of marriageable age who has been married and therefore wouldn't necessarily be a virgin. So what does that mean? Because if you've just been taught, well, here's the virgin birth plainly laid out for us in the Old Testament, you need to understand something about the citation of the Old Testament and the utilization of the Old Testament in the New Testament. And this is a huge area. This is, let's just put it this way. It's an area pretty much outside of Christmas turkey or whatever it is you do for Christmas discussion at the table, probably. It's a big area. Entire books, huge books, tomes have been written on this particular subject. But what you don't need to be doing as a Christian is attempting to argue against the lexical meaning of Alma. Despite the fact that Matthew is writing to Jews, he is quoting from the Greek Septuagint. And the Greek Septuagint has a specific term right here. Behold, the virgin, the Parthenos engastri, shall be with child, and shall bear a son, and you shall call, and the name shall be called to him Emmanuel. So here you have the term Parthenos. We are familiar with the Parthenos in Athens, and Parthenos is the specific technical word for virgin. It does not mean young woman of marriageable age. And this is what Matthew is quoting from. He's quoting from the Greek Septuagint. So when he makes the connection to the virgin birth of Christ, he is accurately representing what the version of the scriptures that he's quoting to his audience represents. So the question is the relationship between Parthenos and Ha'alma. Is Parthenos a verifiably accurate translation of Alma? Well, Alma is not as specific as Parthenos. But the New Testament writer quotes the more specific application because its fulfillment is being found in a very specific application in the virgin birth of Jesus. Now, there is no question that there was an initial fulfillment of the prophecy of Isaiah 7:14. You have to read it in context. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign, because the king had been told to ask for a sign, he wouldn't do it. So the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child and bear a son. She will call his name Emmanuel. He will eat curds and honey. At the time he knows enough to refuse evil and choose good. For before the boy will know enough to refuse evil and choose good, the land whose two kings you dread will be forsaken. So there is no question that in the original context, this is a given sign to the king that he does not have to fear the two kings that he's fearing, and that before the boy will know enough to refuse evil and to choose good. What's that? 2, 3, something like that. The land whose two kings you dread will be forsaken. So something's going to go on back home, and there will be deliverance for the king. And so, what does Emmanuel mean? Well, I won't go into it right now, but especially if your Bible software will allow you to do this, you will see that this is a phrase that occurs a number of times between Isaiah 7 and 11, especially in chapter 8. And it's interesting that the chapter 8 portion is quoted by Peter in 1 Peter 3:15 in the text from whence we get our emphasis upon apologetics, which actually identifies Jesus as Yahweh, at least in the best text of the New Testament it does. Point being that you have this emphasis upon a real fulfillment in history. So you have to have a theology of inspiration that allows for a fulfillment in history, but not a final fulfillment. And when you look at all messianic prophecies, well, okay, I won't say all, but almost every single messianic prophecy, as applied in the New Testament, there was a lesser fulfillment in the past. A couple of exceptions, but not too many. So be aware of the fact that if you're going to quote Isaiah 7:14 and Matthew's citation of it, then be aware of what the background is and be aware of what some of the objections could be, and be prepared to say, well, you know, yes, there was a initial fulfillment back then, but there's a greater fulfillment in Christ. And that's why I have, over the years, a couple times preached a sermon where I've gone from Isaiah 6 to Isaiah 11 and just shown all of each chapter has a messianic text within it that the New Testament writers picked up. And that includes the phraseology of Emmanuel, which, by the way, if you're going to say, see, Emmanuel means Jesus is God, be careful, because there's lots of Hebrew names with El as a part of it. And that doesn't mean that those people were God. Emmanuel, God with us, would by default be God is on our side. God is with us. God is blessing us. We are God's people, etc., etc. It is only in seeing how that is used with a number of different texts that you start seeing that it's not just God is on our side, but God is with us. Once you start seeing Isaiah chapter 40 and stuff like that, you start seeing that there's a greater fulfillment to come. But it's always important to know the background.